So I'd like to
All
introduce
right.
my next guest, special guest. Uh, this person is a good friend of mine that I love very much. Um, when I lived in Hawaii for the couple years that I did, I lived off grid up in the mountain, about 4,000 feet up there on the slopes of the Mauna Loa. And this gentleman we're going to speak to, you know, is the definition of being human centered. He's easy to talk to and he's very interesting to talk to, and you can be yourself around him. And he's helped me tremendously up in the mountain because when you're up that high, there's not a lot of people. Um, but he was there to support me and my family, and every time I called him, he was there ready to help me. So I'd like to introduce my friend Savory. Okay. All right,
Well,
Savory.
hi. Hi, Roderick.
Hello,
Good to see
hello.
you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
It's been a while.
It's been a
This
while.
is a wonderful opportunity to reconnect.
It is. It is. So, I wanted to talk to you and have people get to know you because I feel like you're definitely somebody very interesting for many different reasons. I regard you as very intelligent, and the reason you're easy to talk to is because you don't get offended by any of my questions. So,
Not yet.
not yet. Not yet. So, so Savory. So, let me ask you. So, we're gonna start off with your. Okay, let's start off with where you're from. You're from Boston, correct?
South of Boston, yes.
South of
Massachusetts.
Boston, and you were born and raised there. And then where did you go after that?
When I was 17, I had an opportunity to go to a college in California, Eastern California, called Deep Springs College. And I took that opportunity mostly to get away from my parents' house and have a chance to spread my wings in a place without my mother looking over my shoulder. And because the college was basically free for me, it was easy to convince my parents to let me go there because it wasn't really going to cost them anything. And so by setting that up and filling out the necessary essay questions and things to entice the college to, take me. Um, I put out an effort and I ended up getting away from home and skipping 12th grade of high school, which was my other concern is I really didn't want to go to 12th grade of high school. I had had enough by 11th grade. And the dating games and the football games and all that stuff, was of no interest whatsoever to me. So I wanted out, and that's how I found my way out. So I went out to California and spent 2 years at that school, which was a combined school and a ranch in a desert valley east of Bishop, California, and had a great time, learned a lot of practical skills and eventually was expelled from the school because I didn't maintain my classroom and paper writing, requirements. The dean gave me my druthers about whether I could shape up and write all the papers and act like a real college student or not. And I said, no, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And if you don't like it, you'll have to throw me out. And so he did.
Wow. So now, okay, so you went there, and then how did you get to Hawaii? Did you go to Hawaii after that, or when did you get to
Oh,
Hawaii?
no. It's a long road, Roderick,
It's a long road.
Uh, Yeah, it's a long road. I didn't get to Hawaii till 1984, and the school was back in 1974, let's say.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was, quite a bit later, another 10 years before I came to Hawaii. And in the meantime, um, I spent another year back at home, uh, worked for my dad, um, bought an old 1-ton van, fixed it up, drove it to Santa Fe, and spent 4 years in a commune in Santa Fe, taking care of street people. And and then I left there with my girlfriend to go to Oregon, and I spent 5 years in Oregon. And then from there, I came with her and our two boys to Hawaii.
What made you choose Hawaii?
Her mom lived here, and part of her intent was for her mom to be in contact with her two children and give her a hand. And so she wanted to go hang with her mom, and basically, I didn't really want to come here. It was a little dot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I was used to, having a lot of space to cruise around in. So, but I believed that what she wanted was valid, and so we sold everything and put the rest of it in boxes and sent it through the mail, to Hawaii and ended up here. Yeah,
And and
you know,
when you got here, when you got there, did you like it right away?
well, it's certainly a change from Central Oregon. Central Oregon's kind of old west theme, lots of desert and cold, very cold winters. And, anybody will like the warmth of Hawaii after being in that. So, yeah, I liked it. And we immediately began, sightseeing when we could. And the kids, take the kids down to the beach and see how they interacted with the local kids and, all of that good tourist stuff, so it's hard not to like. Um, but my fear was there wasn't going to be enough space to walk and roam around in.
Yeah.
I was afraid that I would be captured within that tourist framework and not be able to escape. And that turned out not to be so. I ended up doing a lot of backcountry walking and mountain climbing and, uh, all kinds of activities outside of the tourist realm in the years that followed.
Because you got there at 30 years old, right? 29,
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Um, so you were very active. You liked hiking. Did you
Mhm.
like the fact, the mountains and the nature of Hawaii? Is that kind of what captured you also?
Sure. Sure. And so different than Oregon. I mean, we had mountains in Oregon, but they are very rugged, and having so much of the year be winter time, essentially winter time, that during the summer in Oregon, you spend a lot of time going out cutting trees down to make firewood so you could get through the next winter.
Yeah.
Very survival oriented in the lifestyle I had. Whereas in Hawaii, I worked for years as a sign maker for a lesbian couple, and then they sold their business, and I ended up being self-employed in my garage making signs for the local town. And so I could take off and do things when I wanted to. And certainly, there are parts of Hawaii that are just as desolate as Oregon. Um, but you can pretty much choose between however many microclimates there are here. You can choose the kind of temperature and aridity that you want just by cruising around the island, different sides of it.
So when you moved to Hawaii, because for those that are listening, they may not, know that there's different islands. Did you go right to the Big Island?
Yes, that's where her mom lived. She lived on the Kona side of the Big Island, not far from the airport. So in a, nice subdivision on the side of the hill. And we just moved in with her for a month until, she helped us find another place through her
Were
connections.
things way more affordable back then? Because it's everything seems to get more expensive. And if you got there in 84,
Compared to Oregon, it was more expensive at the time.
okay.
Um, but Kona wasn't as developed then. So it was more rural in general. In the last, whatever it's been, 30 years, I've seen Kailua Kona go from, kind of a small port, uh, with a few cruise boats,
Yeah,
to being, overwhelmingly a tourist strip and lots of hotels. So it has transformed tremendously, which is part of the reason I don't live in that area anymore. I moved down south where it's still much more rural.
absolutely, absolutely. I had a question about old A's where the airport used to be. Where you was the airport there where old A's was when you were
No,
there?
no, they had just built the Keahole airport, and the old airport was very much intact in terms of the runway. Um, but people were flying model airplanes on it. That's kind of how it was being used, as well as being beach access. So 84 was after the main airport was constructed.
Okay.
And
So, Saber, you're a very, to me, a different individual. And the reason I say that is because, so you dress like a woman, correct?
some,
Sometimes.
sometimes,
So
yeah.
sometimes you dress like a woman, sometimes you dress like a man, right? Or just you just not like a woman.
I dress however I want to.
Right, right. So, so to make it clear, you do not, okay, you dress like a woman sometimes, but you do not like men.
In a sexual attraction way, that is correct.
Okay. But you're sexually attracted to women.
I totally am. I love women
Totally.
in that sense.
Right, right. So, so that,
And I'm available. I just want to make a
yeah,
plug now. I'm definitely
he's
available.
available. He's available. Okay. For everyone out there, all the ladies out there, he's available. So, so when you dress like a woman, right? And you gave this story about, you being expelled from that college because you decided to do whatever you want to do, right? So
Mhm.
you do whatever you want to do. It seems like you don't care what people think about what you decide to do. Is that true?
It's a question of giving away authority, rather than that I don't care what they think. I don't want to give away authority to other people, thinking that I would think that they should be able to define my reality. You know, that's something I'm not giving away. As to what they think, I'm always curious about what people think, and I'm sure that I influence what people think. And I'd be willing to take some credit for deliberately manipulating, or trying to persuade people to think certain things. So it's not that I don't care what they think, but I try to be judicious in respecting what people think, but not giving them authority by what they think over how I should be,
Okay.
because that's my authority. That's not theirs.
Right. And have you always felt this way? That
No, no, I'm sure not. No, I gave away authority a lot in my life. My mom got a lot of authority for like 17 years. That's why I got the hell out of there.
Right, right. Okay, so when did you start dressing like a woman? Like when was the first
I
time? Do you remember the first time you said, "Hey, I want," oh, because you had to think about it first before you did it. So maybe it was dwelling in your mind, and then you said, "Hey, I'm just can't fight this feeling anymore."
uh, I think the most honest approach to that question is to be much more revealing than I'm instantly comfortable with, but I can get into it. And that is to say that I think at a fairly young age, that I developed a fetish, what would be called a fetish, for women's underwear. Because in the world that I grew up in, sex wasn't something people talked about. You know, Male role models did not educate me as to what sex was about. And in that vacuum, you know, and these is back in the 60s we're talking about, and in that vacuum, there was pornography on the one hand, which I rarely came in contact with. I think I found a Playboy magazine on the side of the road one day, and that was probably the first nude picture I'd ever seen. And so by the time I was 10 years old and starting to become sexually active, um,
Wait,
you
you
know,
were sexually active at 10 years old?
yeah,
Okay.
um, then the most sexual object in my world was probably the laundry basket, and it was exposure to that and the association with women that I developed a what we'd call a fetish for women's underwear. And but that was something that I couldn't discuss with anyone, not my mom or dad or anybody else. And so that unfortunately, became the focal point of my sexuality for years, and something that was secret, that there was no way to work that out, with other people. So, even though I went through periods where, I didn't masturbate, like when I was at Deep Springs, um, or in close company with other people, that was essentially remained the go-to stimulus, that if I wanted to, or if I felt an urge to masturbate, then it would be turned on by that sort of contact or imagery. And, eventually, after I got a Deep Springs and started to hang out with women, and gradually learn something about practical sexuality with women, which I was a real late bloomer at, I met some really, really wonderful women, that were very, very helpful to me. And I'm internally grateful for their input. There's this one lady, Pamela, I met in Bishop, and she was a bit older than me, but she was like the person that introduced me to the concept of, you know, boys and girls being brothers and sisters, treating one another as if you were related to them, and having that sort of respect rather than seeing people of the opposite gender as sex objects, and going with the whole cultural phenomena of objectification. She's the girl that was like, let's go camping. We can go hang out, sleep in the tent, touch bodies, go naked, all of that. It ain't sexual.
Okay.
We're being brothers and sisters. And that was like, wow, I like
How
this.
old were you at
You
that
know,
at that point?
I think I was about 20.
Okay.
So, so yeah, uh, I spent a brief, like a year, living by myself on the mountainside in a mining camp, thinking that somehow I could live alone and be okay.
But
And what I learned from that was that I really needed to be around other people. There was a lot I had to learn about people, and that I could not at that point in my life, just sort of shine that on and be a hermit. That wasn't going to happen. So
at this
I made that attempt.
at this point, you weren't dressing like a woman, right? No,
No,
you
no.
were you had a different name, right?
Yep. My name was Philip.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you had
Presented myself as sort of a, you know, rough and ready mountain person that mostly was hitchhiking around. And
yeah.
yeah, until that period in Bishop area expired, which was rather abrupt. I had spent a bit of time with a beekeeper helping with keeping bees. At the same time, I had the mining claim, and at the same time, I was hitchhiking up and down the valley between various friends' houses. And I got thrown out of the beekeeper's yard. He got upset with me because I brought a dog that became pregnant, had a bunch of puppies, bothered his neighbors. He gave me my druthers, and I was like, well, I've gotten rid of all the dogs except one, and I can't get rid of this one.
Yeah.
So he said, well, then you got to leave, bro. And
Yeah.
so I did, and my resort was to go to the Paiute Indian Reservation
Yeah.
and think that I could squat on the reservation. And that first night, I was invited up by the guy that ran the sweat. I was invited up to help him load hay from his fields in the morning. And during that night, some young Native American guys were out varmint hunting, and they saw my dog's eyes in their spotlight, and they shot just as I was reaching up to pull the dog down out of the light, and it took the end of my thumb off. And so abruptly, you know, I had to go to the hospital, get it stitched up. It had become obvious that I shouldn't have been there in the first place. But my sweat lodge leader was very, very kind. Took care of me for about 4 days, and then another person in the sweat took me home with them to Lone Pine. But it caused me to really do some soul searching and self-examination. It was my hitchhiking thumb. Um,
Yeah.
the dog had died, et cetera, et cetera. It was painful, very painful awakening. And as a result, I did a turnaround and decided to stop bumming off of people, to get a job and wash dishes, rent a place, and eventually go back and visit my parents and see if maybe I had missed something. Maybe they were, a lot better than I remembered them
Were
being.
you an only child?
No, I have two sisters.
You do have two sisters. They're
So,
older than you, right?
no, they're younger.
They're younger than you.
I was the oldest.
So back to
So I drifted off topic.
yeah,
We wanted to talk about the sexuality
and
and
how you got into, starting,
yeah, cross-dressing. So yeah, so I guess what I was saying is there's these huge chunks of my life when that wasn't something that was very potent, in me. It was an underlying fetish, but it didn't get expressed in any way. And I was able to have relationships with women that were relatively successful, at least for short periods of time. And my goal was to have a long term relationship. And that didn't really occur until leaving my home in Massachusetts for the second time, traveling out in that 1-ton van to Santa Fe and joining the commune, which was this immersion experience within a group of 50 people, where I had no privacy whatsoever. And that we were all, intimately aware of each other's presence all the time. And so that helped me to become a lot less introverted. It helped me to feel comfortable dealing with strangers, which I had been, much more introverted and shy, and to be on the street and dealing with street people and be comfortable. So
so
it was in that context that I made relationships with several different women, and that in itself was a real distraction from that underlying fetish.
okay, so you being an introvert, do you consider yourself an introvert now?
I don't think I fit that category anymore. I think because of the experience in the Brotherhood, um, a lot of my walls came down. My sense of protection, it was like introverted from what,
Yeah.
I was no longer afraid of people.
Yeah.
I no longer had much to hide.
Yeah. And do you think that introvertness came from like where you lived with your parents, or why do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was the social setting, didn't have many friends. It was very rural. Um, didn't practice social skills. And so I think a lack of social skills and that my interests were kind of bookish and, nerdy. And, most of the people I met as a kid, were, they just weren't into that.
Right.
I'm not going to disrespect what they were into. They were probably being normal kids.
Right.
I was doing a lot of research in philosophy and psychology and stuff.
So so back to basically with your life going towards opening up, being less introverted, being
Yeah.
around women and things like that. Um with the cross-dressing thing, did you at that time, let's just say when you were 20, did you know any cross-dressers? Did you know about it? Did you see it? Was it out there? What was
Well, I think that at that time there were like comedy things on TV, Milton Berle, stuff like that, where it was set up to make people laugh. It was an object of ridicule,
right,
you know.
right.
So that would be my association at that time.
So when did you have the desire to want to start dressing? Like not
Okay.
that you did it,
So
but
that,
you wanted it.
yeah, it didn't really occur until the girl I left the Brotherhood with. We went to Oregon. We spent 5 years there. We had two kids. We lived, both in town and in a ranch. And then we finally came to Oregon. Once we came to Oregon, and I was in an association with this lesbian couple working for them, then there was space in my life where even though my wife at the time would openly do sex with me that involved cross-dressing, and to give her a lot of credit for that, that it was something that she helped me to bring out and talk about and act out with her as part of the sex play.
Well,
But
that means she knew about it. She knew about
she knew about it.
because
Yes, it's something we had been intimate enough that I had been able to get that up and out.
but what
And
was it that you got up and out that the fact that is that you like or that you want to cross
yeah,
dress
yes, and that I could safely with her
during a sexual moment or just in general?
during a sexual moment
Okay.
because that wasn't something that she would support in front of children or in the public.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Yeah. So that ultimately became the stress point when I guess you would say I began pursuing cross-dressing secretly, not in her presence.
Okay, but let me take it back a little bit. When you told her,
Okay.
uh,
Mhm.
was it shocking to her? Did she have an idea or what was her reaction when because you were scared to tell her,
I,
right?
I was scared to tell her. It was a question of intimacy and of honesty. Ultimately, if you're in a relationship of that depth, where you've had children and done all kinds of crazy things together, honesty is one of the most, important qualities. And if you got anything that you're not being honest about, that's a problem. So it was really good for us to discuss that. I don't remember the circumstances, honestly. I
Yeah.
can't give you a verbatim. I just know that she was willing to entertain
And you
it.
felt relieved being able to tell her, right?
Yeah,
Because
you
it was
know, uh,
something was
just for the sake of honesty. Yeah, just the
yeah.
openness of it. Because what I came to realize, after it became apparent that after I made up my mind that I needed to do this cross-dressing thing, which had gone far beyond, women's underwear, it had become a question of what do you call it? Mimicking women behavior and everything. Um, when it became clear to me that this was something that was important to me, um, and that I still had a tremendous amount of paranoia, anxiety, and adrenaline rush hooked up with this behavior. It finally became obvious to me that it wasn't the behavior that was the problem. It was the adrenaline rush that I had come to associate with the behavior, that was the real problem. that I was essentially an adrenaline junkie using the clothing as a stimulus fix.
Now, when you say
And I
using,
realized that that was pretty weird,
and you don't have to, you can give as much detail as you want, but when you talk about using the clothing, you talk about the mask
wearing the clothing,
wearing the clothing. Okay.
wearing the clothing,
Became a
and
big, it
ultimately,
was a rush. It was a rush when you wore the clothing. Okay.
yes, it was a rush when I wore the clothing, and that in turn became part of the sexual arousal, masturbation, and everything else.
Got it.
You know, but it was the adrenaline that was the core part of it, as much as just what time of month it was, as to how horny I was. It was really this uh, paranoia and adrenaline from the paranoia as to the secrecy of it. That was a huge part of the stimulus that I only realized after exposing it to my wife and realizing that wasn't happening then.
Oh,
Because we were being open and honest,
right.
the adrenaline wasn't happening, and it made me realize that the adrenaline was an essential part of the whole turn on.
Right.
And that's when I started wised up to it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally a junkie.
Right. Right. And that was what age were you at that point?
This is when I was, uh, uh,
25?
let's see, it came in 84. I lived with her for 5 years.
Okay.
So it was, you know,
30 something.
uh, uh, so, so let's say 1990. Um, at that point, I was,
Okay.
can't do math on the
Wait, because
spot,
84 you were 30,
35, I guess,
90 would be 6
35.
years, so that'd be 35 years old. 35, 36, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
S-
So I was 35.
So,
At which point I presented to my wife
right.
as like, okay, I think what I really need to do is go public with this in order to overcome this crazy fear and this adrenaline. And she was like, no, it ain't happening. I'm with you, but I'm not with you that far for the sake of the children and, social stigma and all of that. I can't do it. And so that's when we decided to separate because I knew I was going to do it anyhow.
Well, you were already doing it behind her back. Right.
Right,
But she,
right,
she never
right.
caught you or anything like that, right? Okay.
And turned out she had another potential boyfriend. So,
Yeah.
but that's not part of the issue.
Right. So you moved on, you guys separated. Um,
Yep.
and then did you feel some sort of like freedom?
Yeah.
You felt,
And I felt that especially the freedom to talk about it with anybody,
but
and discuss. And this is before I started publicly cross-dressing. I at least would talk about it with any, woman that I would sit down, had an interest in, we would talk about, cross-dressing
yeah.
as that was going to be part of the thing
And
and
these women
preparing myself
and these women that you were
for.
talking to were supportive. Was it easy to talk to them about this type of thing, or were some of them offended? Were some of them, you know,
I, I was actually, I was actually really surprised, you know, um, at least the women that I talked to, I mean, by and large, they were really uh, positive and at least appreciated the vulnerability and honesty that I was showing them. That was uncommon,
yeah,
and that they appreciated that. So I, my fear that I would be, whatever, despised or whatever for it,
yeah,
turned out to be not so.
right,
I actually got general support from women that I talked to. I wasn't actually cross-dressing openly at that time,
yeah.
but the discussion of it was very important.
Now, first of all, I commend you on listening that you were actually like slowly coming out and you were slowly, you know, you know, you talked to your wife about it at one time and then and now you're talking to women and you know,
basically.
so
Yeah.
were you worried because and I think in some people's minds, like when you cross dress, a lot of people feel like that's means that you are gay. Is that a common
Yeah.
thought?
At least it used to be.
It used to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, especially during the time you were in, it's
Right.
different. You know,
Right.
things are more acceptable now and things people understand more than they
Mhm.
did when you were doing it. But did you never talked to any guys about this, right? Or did you?
Uh, Generally not, you know, yeah, generally not.
Yeah.
I can't remember an instance when I did.
Um, so you talked about the rush and how you felt whenever you're doing it secretly. Now that you
Mhm.
were separated or divorced and you were talking to women about this, at that point you weren't doing it yet, like openly,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
It wasn't until I found a woman who was like full on actively supported and, wanted to hang out with me that the opportunity arose where I felt safe enough.
yeah.
And, that was, uh, I guess within about a year and a half after I split up with my wife, I met Margot, moved in with Margot, and began a whole event with her. Um, and and she encouraged me to go ahead and do it and be publicly cross-dressing when I felt like it, and that she would back me up
Was she,
with the
was she
community.
your friend or was she somebody you were interested in sexually or a girlfriend or something like that?
No, I was at that point I had already moved in with her and we were having sex and um, I she had 3 kids and my son came to live with us too. And so we had this, family scenario and we're trying to develop something there at her house where she didn't have to go off to work every day and leave her kids without someone at home after school.
Yeah.
So we're trying to consolidate and create something that would generate income right at her house. And so we worked together to create that, and we're successful. And in the process, we became a community center where lots and lots of people in the community would come to our house to buy food or interact, and they would find me cross-dressing.
Right.
Not very well, I would have to say
Wait,
at
wait.
that point,
Wait.
you know.
What was it?
And they would
Well,
ask,
the way you were dressing or the reaction?
right, the way I was dressing, I was like, I had no sense of
Oh, you
style.
had no sense of style in your cross-dressing in the early cross-dressing career.
Uh, Yes, yes.
Right.
So, the other people in the community would ask Margot, well, what's up with that?
Right.
But she would explain, don't worry, I'm having good sex. He's not a threat.
Yeah.
Just, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just that much sort of a defense put people at ease to where they weren't worried about their kids being molested or,
Right.
all the other fears that float around.
Yeah.
And because of her being a Taurus and able to pull that off, she brought skills to the situation I didn't have.
Like
And
what?
and with her support, the to be to be secure enough in myself to cross dress publicly with no support. Um, I just didn't have it. I didn't have that kind of personality. And having her support made a tremendous difference for me to where I had a period of a couple of years to relax and stop feeling the adrenaline and stop worrying about what people thought
But the
and
adrenaline,
go about my business.
the adrenaline is a negative thing?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
I mean it is that's the addiction.
Okay.
And so that addiction subsided as I became more and more relaxed in not worrying about what other people thought
Yeah.
and just feeling accepted and having lots of positive feedback from people, acting normally, not but batting an eye,
Right.
even if I was dressed badly, you know,
Right.
um, they were still happy to see me, and we were talking like we, normally talk. And so that all diminished
And Margot helped you with that
tremendously. Yeah.
because that's what you said that she had that you didn't have, and that's the
Yeah.
confidence,
The personality type,
personality type.
the Taurus, you know, stand her ground, be persuasive rather than, I have my personality type tended to shy away from confrontation.
Yes.
Still does.
Right. Margot's a special person. I mean,
Yes.
because the who you are now and who I see, I mean, I guess because you've been doing it for so many years that it's just part of who you are. You don't even worry or think about it. Um, but we talked yesterday, and you mentioned that in Ocean View, where you live, um, there's people that have seen you for 4 or 5 years that are now approaching you because they
Right.
feel either more comfortable or brave to
Hmm.
be able to talk to you or ask you questions, right?
Right. That's true.
And what is it about those people that takes them so long to come if they're curious about you? What do you think that is?
I think that we're all mirrors for each other and that we tend to see ourselves in the mirror. And so I can't really know what that person sees in me when I'm being a mirror for them, but it's definitely part of themselves. And so they are having, in my opinion, a problem integrating a part of themselves, and that prevents them from getting closer to the mirror.
Now, that's the type of talk that we used to have that I was learning and I was trying to get that. So that's pretty deep. So we're going to go into that right there. So you're talking about a mirror, right? A reflection. So you're saying that you're a reflection, a direct reflection of them?
What I'm saying is, all they can see in me is a reflection of them.
All they can see in you is a reflection of themselves.
Right.
So,
There's a whole lot going on in every person that we can't see because of our own limitations.
okay.
We can only see to the limits of who we are, what we're conscious of ourselves.
So give me I'm going to give an example. You tell me if this is a good example. So if
Yeah,
someone sees
yeah.
you and has a problem with you because you're a
That's their
woman,
problem.
no, right, it's their problem, but is that part of some sort of reflection?
Yeah,
And the reflection
yeah.
means meaning what? It means that they have a problem with themselves. That's why they're unable to accept you.
Yep, pretty much just like that.
That's that's pretty clear. Now, that is information that is I this is good. Like if you could teach someone this at a young age,
Yeah, yeah. It'd save us a lot of trouble.
yeah, it would save you a lot of turbulence, unnecessary worry,
Oh yeah, yeah,
all kinds of things, you know? But
yeah.
so now before let's go back a little bit. When you started dressing and Margot was helping you on your journey, be more
Right.
comfortable and have less anxiety and be normal, like how you
Yeah.
normally are. Um, were you worried or did you have people, guys in particular, because it sounds like the women are supportive, guys having a problem, saying things to you, wanting to fight you, or maybe fighting you or jumping you or whatever bad things have bad things been done to you from guys?
Fortunately not. Fortunately not. It's not that kind of neighborhood, maybe,
Yeah.
but I did. Hmm, Margot's ex uh, continued to be in contact with her, and they exchanged the children on a regular basis. So he was somebody that I came in contact with, and he had been abusive to Margot. And she was in no way going to, let him back into having more authority than he was granted by the court. Um, but it kind of bothered him, I think, that, I had replaced him and that I was in, a sort of surrogate dad position with his kids. And he had buddies around the neighborhood that, yeah, they were pot smoking buddies and, stuff like that. And later I heard from one of his buddies that, he had been complaining to the guys about me and that they had, kind of like fielded the idea that they should do something about me, you know, and, get rid of the body off South Point. Um,
Like, really? Like,
yeah.
get rid of him,
And
period.
yeah, yeah. And so the guy that was confessing this to me, we had had some very good conversations, and he, among these people, realized that I could meet him in his world, that we could talk about building things, and he had all kinds of welding projects that he was working on. And he liked the fact that he could describe what he was doing to me, and I totally got it. And I could give him feedback, and
Yeah.
and we could have these really male conversations.
Right.
Um, and so he respected me in spite of what I was doing. And so he had stood up for me, and therefore it had not gone the way that it could have.
Right.
And that was the only time I ever heard of anything like that being a possibility.
Right.
Um, so I just told that as a story, because in my world it was a true story,
Yes.
but there was absolutely no evidence of it.
Right.
It was just my buddy, coming clean.
Yeah.
So there certainly were some undercurrents, but to get back to the mirroring problem, my continuing anxiety about interfacing with strangers, in the public was that I had the presupposition that people would judge me. It was my internal voice that was prepping me, looking for reaction, you know. And and so that's what I would be looking for in the person that I met. And anything that would trigger a validation of that, then it would convince and amplify that idea in my mind. But, for the most part, it wasn't real. People weren't having that judgmental thing, at least on the surface. Um, and the more that I became okay with myself, the less I was looking for that.
Right. Right.
And the more I became okay with myself, other people were more at ease because they were noticing I wasn't as nervous.
Right.
And so they didn't in turn reflect and think, well, the guy's nervous, maybe there's something wrong with him. So the feedback loop that comes between people when there's any sort of underlying fear involved gets amplified. But as you get hold of yourself and relax and become loving of yourself and accepting of yourself, everybody else, that's what they want too. So it just naturally arises in other people that,
Yeah.
oh, he looks like he's okay. I think he's okay.
That kind of reminds me when I used to work at in Orlando, Florida. I used to work at the dog track back in the
Mm-hmm.
early 90s. And there was a gentleman that used to take me home. Uh his name is Bruce. He's probably going to watch this. But Bruce, he used to take me home, right? Take used to take me home. Bruce is gay, right? Bruce used to take me home, and there was somebody else. I'm not gonna say his name, but he used to live close to me, so he used to take us home,
Hmm.
and then I used to sit in the front seat, and this other guy used to sit in the back seat, right? So, he took us home, like, thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it. He, hey, no problem. He always take me home. And then when we go back to the dog track, the guys would tease us, right? Oh
Mm.
yeah, yeah, you got something with Bruce, and they're teasing, right? But I'm
Hmm.
cool. You know what I mean? I'm cool with Bruce. I don't, I have no problem. If
Uh-huh.
you're teasing me and I'm comfortable, it's not gonna bother me. But the guy in the back seat is like, no, no, no. Roderick was in the front seat every time. So he's uncomfortable, right? So now he's pointing the finger, saying I'm in the front seat, but he
Yeah.
doesn't realize that no one's teasing me anymore because they can see it's no big deal to
Right.
me. But now that you're
Right.
you're you're getting a reaction,
You're reacting.
yeah. So now they're like, oh, we're gonna mess with
Uh,
him.
yeah.
So I thought
That's how guys are.
so that kind of goes with what you're
Yeah.
saying. When you're comfortable,
Yeah.
it, you
Yeah.
know, people that tease you about things that you're comfortable with is, you know,
Hmm.
it just deflects everything.
Hmm.
You
It
know,
does.
if someone's heavy set, somebody's like, oh,
Mm.
and you call them names, yeah, hey, you fat this or whatever you say to them, and they're comfortable. They're okay.
Right.
Is that your low
Right.
blow? Because that's I know I'm a big
Yes.
person. But
Right.
someone that's conscious about it is like, oh, I'm not really that big, but now, whatever. So it's you're conscious. It's whatever you
Right.
are comfortable with and secure with. You'll be okay. But no,
So
definitely
the self-acceptance is a huge part of it, and how uh, what we see in the mirror of someone else, it has a lot to do with how much of our own selves we've faced and integrated and accepted. And if there's stuff, which there always is something, that as a human, we haven't experienced or we haven't looked into, um, that's possible there in us as a hot spot, Um, I think that's part of life's journey is to discover more and more of what we don't know about ourselves, and that comes up coincidentally with just the right people to reflect that part,
to reflect what
you know,
part?
the part that we need to discover
The part we need to discover, and the part we need to discover happens when you engage with other people.
that will draw attention to it,
Right.
or that they have something about themselves that it triggers the thing in you that is you're ready to work on. Um, I mean, there's so much of to us that besides what we're conscious of. Like the dream world, there's stuff getting processed in the dream world from the unconscious all the time. When I wake up in the morning out of my dream experience, suddenly I'm a different person. I'm not the same person that was in the dream. There's parts to me that I am not engaging during waking life. And and as I've become more aware of that, I'm like, oh wow, what's back there behind the curtain, man? Because there's a lot. For me at this point, it's all of being human is the part that I'm not conscious of. I'm conscious of a part of being human, and I see that reflected in my friend group, in my tribe, and the folks that I like and I'm associating with. That's all bolstering the conscious part of me that is, comfortable.
Yeah.
But the rest of it that's back there, that's the rest of humanity as well. It's all those folks that I don't interact with. That's my humanity. It's the rest of humanity, literally. So who I get to encounter face to face could easily be a reference to a hidden part of my own humanity,
Oh
of my own
man.
unconscious.
I I get it. I get it. You know, I get it. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's I
Yeah.
remember we used to have discussions up in the mountain, me, you,
Yeah.
and Mo. Um,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it was great discussions. And I was like, hey, I said something, and you said, well, that's just a reflection of you. Stop acting. He said, stop acting some way, and realize that you are uh
What
what you
you
think
see.
we are. So stop acting like you're, different or whatever. I forgot how you put it, but I
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when I realized, oh, okay. And by you saying what you just said makes me understand it a lot clearer because there's parts of everyone, from what I'm gathering, what you're saying, that when you meet somebody, because there's all kinds of people out there, you might discover a part of you that you didn't know about,
Yeah.
right?
You weren't conscious
You
of.
weren't conscious
Yeah.
of, and that could be positive and negative, right?
Yeah. Totally. That's a judgment, whether you like it or not. You know, that's separate issue. That could be the very reason you're not conscious of it, is that it's you don't like it.
Oh, right, right. That could be the reason, or it just
That's the
because or
suppression.
you could just be unconscious about it. Right, right, right. You'll never know that answer though, right?
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
You won't know that answer for sure.
Right.
Yeah. No, wow, that's
So
that. So,
the process of discovery,
yeah,
the curiosity that you express in your, whole demeanor,
yeah.
it goes hand in hand with that as a way of discovering what it is to be human, which is ultimately so much more interesting than who am I?
And when you say what it is to be human, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
What it means is we got 8 billion samples. I can't actually meet all of them, but I make the assumption that I am one of them. And I've spent a huge part of my life being preoccupied with my identity, and getting it all, getting all the little mustaches in order, Whereas it's a far more interesting question to understand my potential as a human than it is to be preoccupied with some sort of superficial conscious presentation of the result of my childhood upbringing, peer group, culture, and whatever, all those limitations that I took on, you know, through circumstance mostly, just happened to be in that spot. Um, and got comfortable with it, and decided that was who I am.
Right,
I am Savory, I am Philip.
right.
These sort of identity, ego limits that I've taken on and I feel comfortable with is such a tiny, tiny part of being human. It is keeping me from actually knowing what it is to be human. And
Right.
I have that huge potential underlying the things that I'm aware of all the time, you know? And so isn't it more interesting to go out and discover the parts of myself and my potential as a human than it is to just keep on piddling away with, do I look good in this particular set of mirrors? It's like,
No, yeah.
no, I want to see what's really happening,
Would you
and I get to learn about that from every person I meet.
so would you say most people are in the condition that you were in?
I make the assumption because of my own limitations. Yeah. When I start meeting gurus and folks that are like totally full blown, well, then I'll make a different assumption. But until that time, I'm gonna like assume that most of us are like me. But that's just because I'm limited by the mirrors that I'm looking at.
And this applies to everybody.
Yeah. I project it on everybody. Not, nobody has to do it. There's no have to. But I'm just putting it out there as a suggestion that I think is more interesting than everybody fighting about the differences in their identities. Who gives a shit?
No, you're right. You're right.
What are we defending? We're defending this little corner of the room? Fuck, you know? No.
No, you're
You
right.
know, if we were to discover what it was to be human, we recognize it in every person we met. Well, that would be more interesting than fighting about these tiny differences.
What I think about that is that, you know, like when I moved to Ocean View, for everyone's out there, it's a secluded area. It's actually the biggest subdivision in America, right? I don't know if you knew that.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah,
I've been told
I
that.
looked it up. So HOVE, Hawaiian Ocean View Estates. So when I was up there in the mountain, off grid, secluded, you know, very far from everybody and all the city life. I think when people are in a city life or they're surrounded by like a lot of people, then it's hard to maybe get to where you're at, where people could think more about humans instead of just thinking about themselves or whatever. So, it's kind of like when people go, let's say people, this is an example, people go away to prison or something and they go away for a long time. They usually come back as a different person because they've had a lot of time to think. And when you have a lot of time to think and you have space, you get some people they're uncomfortable with space. They have to have somebody there. There has to have the TV has to be playing. They need noise. They need this. They need that. But they don't want to be alone. They don't want to just soak in their thoughts. So they have all these distractions. And I think when you have distractions, it's hard to get to a level of what you're saying. What do you think about that? You're in a mountain
Yeah.
away from everybody, so you have a lot of time to to think.
I talk to myself. I talk to myself. I entertain myself, and
Right.
I talk to Wolfie.
Right.
So, but there isn't a lot of external distraction. And I do reflect on, I'll go down to town once a day to the cafe and just circumstance make an encounter with one or two people, and then I go back up to the cabin and I'll reflect upon whatever occurred
Yeah.
in my memory. Um, but the distractions that we create or we welcome in our lives, um, they do tend to keep us in avoidance of anything that might be coming up out of our unconscious.
Right.
Um, and I think that's a very deliberate ploy by the ego identity to protect itself. Um, and whereas there are certainly are people, even in the city, who regularly rely on input from their unconscious in a very constructive way. If they are creators or artists or musicians or whatever, they're always kind of listening to the unconscious to see what bubbles up out of there,
Yeah.
and to try to utilize it or channel it into some creative way. Um, Whereas, if you have continual stimulus from the TV or whatever, cell phone, then your mind is busy, processing that. It's not going to hear stuff bubbling up from the unconscious,
Yeah.
you know, and so it's a protective measure. And I totally get why the ego protects itself. Um, and this isn't to say that I think egos are like categorically a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think they're a totally necessary, functional part of being human. Um, but combined with insecurity, and I mean, the real threat to the ego is that it doesn't really exist, that it's a fiction that could evaporate at any time. That's the real threat, and so it's it's totally needing to justify itself and protect itself from other egos that present a threat, content wise, or thinking about dying, or, um, you know, the things that undermine the validity of the assumptions that an ego rests on, that some things are good and other things are bad. For example, most egos are going to rest on some sort of assumptions like that, and that's where all your racism and other stuff comes into play. But these sort of baseline ego identity assumptions are continually under threat just by walking around in the world and meeting people that are different, And so I understand that it puts up a good defense by, ignoring whatever might threaten it, distracting itself, not facing the fact that it's going to evaporate into thin air one day when you die, avoiding all of that sort of threat and just being comfortable, staying in the zone. So I get it. It's very reasonable. I've done it. I think a lot of people probably do it. But to try to find a way to challenge that and help people grow without directly assaulting it, that's the trick. Because the shields are going to go up if you like just come face to face with somebody, like tell them you're wrong.
Right,
That ain't going to work,
right.
And so I'm offering this idea as a end run to make it the person themselves, through curiosity, reach out to discover who they are besides who they think they are, in the form of the people they're presented with, and appealing to the idea that to really get what it is to be human is a tremendous advantage,
Yeah, but you
you
have
know.
to care to want to be a better human to even entertain any of what you're saying, right? You have to identify.
Want to, it's like the same reason that people and they play these video games, they're always wanting to, kill some creature or whatever to get a new weapon. I don't know. I mean, I don't do these things,
Right,
but that's the feeling I get. You're always trying to get more tools,
right.
and so that's the way I would present it. Is it's not about being a better person, because I would have to say that there's a lot about being human that's not very nice.
That,
That doesn't mean you're going to be a nicer human.
right.
It might just mean that you're a more complete human. You're more of the whole potential of being human, and that could just be better survival skills. You know, it could being able to more clearly recognize in another human being
Also,
more about them.
yeah, but also in your environment, you know, let's just say where I come from and where Lisa comes from. Lisa comes from a tough area in Brooklyn, right?
Hmm.
So Lisa, when we lived in Florida, Hawaii, now we're here in Texas, she's people, nice. They like her. They're drawn to her. She smiles a lot. She's friendly. She's funny. In
Hmm.
Brooklyn, when she goes back, we just went back recently, and there's a certain vibe that you have to mode that you have to be in because it's kind of aggressive. So if you're in an aggressive environment where you have to protect yourself, right, from
Uh-huh.
because for whatever reason, then it's hard to let your guards down. It's hard to see other things, and that's what I was talking about. When you leave
Yeah.
that area, and that's why a lot of people when they leave wherever they're from and they get to see something else, a lot of
Uh-huh.
times when they go back to visit, people always say, that they've changed. And of course they've
Right.
changed because they left that little bubble of whatever was happening and they realized, whoa, there's other things happening in other types of people in other places,
Right.
that
Right.
think and feel differently or they think the same. But I mean, there's more. It's different, and that's why I feel like when you leave where you're from and you go somewhere else, you're gonna grow mentally because you're outside your comfort zone. You're outside of some a place where you're not used to whatever is over there. Because anywhere you go, any state you go, any city you go, there's different things happening that you're not used to,
Right.
and that helps you understand more. And that comes with race. That comes with anything,
Yeah.
you know. You know, when I got to Florida back in '90, I moved from Florida. I mean, I moved from Canada to Florida, and I played soccer my whole life. My cousins, they're Hall of Fame
Mhm.
soccer players. We played soccer. When I went to Florida, little town called Oviedo, and I played basketball too. But all my people, when they didn't see me on the court, the basketball court, I told them, "Hey, I'm." They said, "Where have you been?" I said, "I'm playing soccer," and they were like, "Soccer? Like black people don't play soccer, right?" And I was confused, right? Because I was young, and I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "The World Cup has like all kinds of countries. It's like a world sport. There's people in Africa, the islands, and they're black just like I am, or if not blacker." But
Yeah.
the point is that all they saw where they lived was white people playing soccer. They never cared about soccer.
Right.
They just see, they go to the field, it's white people playing soccer, right? So that's what they
Mhm.
have in their minds.
Mhm.
But they have
Mhm.
that in their minds because they haven't been anywhere else. And
Right.
once you go somewhere else and you learn about other people's cultures, and you know, not all, whether you're black, white, Spanish, Chinese, whatever race you are, everyone's not
Yeah.
doing the same thing in every
Right.
city in every state. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank God.
So
It's,
let's get
yeah. So
let's get back into this part though. Now you came out, Marco helped you, you're out there, you're comfortable.
yeah.
Now the adrenaline, like when you were doing it secretly,
Mhm.
you were getting some sort of like adrenaline rush, which I thought an adrenaline rush is a good thing.
Right. No,
Oh,
it is. There's no difference between excitement and fear, in
oh,
that
you started
regard.
something. You started something there. Wait a second. You know what? I don't even know which way to go now. Let's go in the real. Let's go in present time.
Ploy. It was just a ploy to throw you off the
Yeah, no,
scent.
that was a
Let's
good
get
one.
let's
But do
continue.
you really believe there's no difference between fear and what was it? Fear and
Man.
excitement. There's no difference.
Well, in certain circumstances, there isn't. Let's refine it. You know, the person that goes bungee jumping,
Right.
are they excited or they're scared shitless?
Right.
Is there a difference? No, there's no difference. And partly they're doing it because they have an adrenaline addiction.
So, like horror movies, some people love being scared.
Some people love horror
Right.
movies. I don't.
Right.
I don't like
I don't
them.
watch them either. So, I don't get scared either, but it's like some people want to get scared, and like you said, a amusement park, or bungee jumping or roller
Yeah.
coasters. It's like that fear of.
All the things we do to get that rush. And I call it an addiction, a self-dosing addiction.
So that adrenaline rush, which is an addiction, is an addiction an addiction in that sense. Is that a bad thing?
I'm not going to judge it. My personal experience, is like it's throwing off my whole social context. It's invading my whole social space. You know, I'm every person I'm meeting back then. I'm like wondering or imagining what they would think if they knew my secret, for
Oh, got
example.
it. Right.
You see? So, in that sense, it's not good in a social context. Um, if you think about some male behavior that's based on intimidation and trying to create fear in other people,
Yeah.
then that's maybe not a good thing. Um, But on so it's judging it,
Yeah.
on in bald terms like that. I don't want to do
Right.
that because it's misleading.
Right.
It's a human thing. It's a brain chemical that we either turn on deliberately by conjuring up the thing that will induce it, or we feel like it gets done to us as a victim when we encounter something we associate with the adrenaline rush.
Okay.
Sometimes you just have to say a word, snake or,
Yeah.
whatever, and people get a hit,
Right.
so, but it's just brain chemistry, you
Yeah.
know, and it's your relationship with it, whether you're,
Is
needing a fix all the time.
is it that dopamine that people talk about? Is that something that could be
It's called adrenaline.
adrenaline?
It's called
Okay.
adrenaline. Yeah.
Um, I was gonna ask you. So when you started coming out and got more confident, then you were okay.
I was a way, way better, about everything, because at that point, I had enough experience in the world that in general I hadn't been beat up, I hadn't been accosted or held up at gunpoint except once, and so in general I wasn't afraid of people. Um, but once I could play out that fantasy, and not get the adrenaline hit, then I could really relax and really not be distracted when I encountered people. And it really helped me to be more open and more accessible with people that I would meet, strangers, and have the lack of that brain chemistry going on that would undermine my attempt to connect with them,
Yeah.
to where I could just be curious,
Right.
And so it made a tremendous difference. I was with Margot for 13 years. So
You stay with Margot. She
it
sounds like a solid person. Like,
Margaret, she's a good person. We were friends till the end. She did die
oh, okay.
years later,
Wow.
but we always stayed friends. And but basically, I got bored. I got bored. Once the kids were out of the house and it was just her and I, and we were starting to, be distracted into internet. The internet was up and coming, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
We weren't really engaging and doing anything
Yeah.
together that was interesting for me,
Okay.
and so I decided to leave.
Okay. So,
There wasn't anything wrong with her.
right. Right. No, definitely. So there's a couple things. One is you you also have breasts, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
So we talked about hormones before, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
how you got them, correct?
Right,
So
right.
that's more than cross-dressing.
It is. It totally is.
S-
That's
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 another level.
curiosity run amok.
Okay. All right. Okay. But and before we get into that a little bit, I want to ask you, because you're dressed like a woman sometimes, um, do you have men hitting on you sometimes?
I have had gay men hitting on me, but
Not straight men,
not
gay men.
straight men. Right. Yeah.
So,
You know.
okay, so how
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about
So,
that.
uh, well, I think earlier we mentioned the presumption that I might be gay as something common from the culture. People associate it with gay men because there are many gay men who cross-dress, you know, and so it's a reasonable thought. I don't blame people for thinking that. It's the burden is on me to clarify, and so that's what happens. Um, and I feel, at least in my local community. where I've enjoyed tremendous support from gay men, even after they know that I'm not really part of their playing field. Um, but they're really warm, and I get invited to, birthday parties and stuff like that of gay people, and I'm really well treated and warmly hugged and everything there. Um, and I appreciate that. And in a sense, my belief is that it is that my presence and my presentation is indirectly helpful to them as a community, as a separate subculture. I think it's somewhat helpful. It takes some of the heat off of them, maybe. And on the other hand, it's opening up to the general population that it's not black and white, and that people do have a variety of possibilities, even if they're gay in their dressing and in their presentation. It supports them in that. Um, and similarly, had really good support from lesbians and, other people that are um, gender bending in various ways. Even if I'm not doing the same kind of activity that they are, they do show their support to me, and I reciprocate. And so that's a sideline. As far as straight men hitting on me, uh, I only have one story about that. I was hitchhiking with a full dress on and everything, and and I just got off work. I didn't been doing landscaping all day. I was sweaty, whatnot. I put my dress
You
on,
did landscape. You
hitchhiking.
did landscaping with the dress, or this is you got dressed after?
No, afterwards I take the dirty clothes off, put the
Okay.
dress on,
All right.
to go hitchhiking,
Right.
and I was supposed to go and meet my supposed to catch the bus.
Right.
That's what it was. So I needed a ride down from where I was working to the bus stop. And so I'm there hitchhiking, minding my own business in my dress. And this guy, red truck, pulls over, and, throws the door open. And I get in. And he's actively masturbating while he's driving. And he's requesting that I give him head.
Okay.
And I'm now in the position where I need the ride. I don't want to insult him, I respect that he's made an honest mistake, you know, and I just have to nicely explain to him that I'm not gay, I'm not going to give him head, and that I need to get down to the bus so I could go home to my girlfriend, you know. And so it went off reasonably well, He wasn't like angry or shamed or anything, but I didn't know if he was straight or what he was, that wasn't part of my thing, but it was the closest experience I had to where someone made an assumption about me that was in error.
Did you get a ride?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I continued down the hill with him. It
It,
wasn't that far, but
right, but did he
you
did
know,
did was he done before you got in the car, or or
he was hoping that I was going to complete his fantasy
right?
world, for him. And
Gotcha.
and instead he was slightly embarrassed.
Got it. But he was nice enough to still give you a ride.
Yeah,
That's that,
yeah.
that that's good.
You know,
That
I've hitchhiked in a dress a lot. It's
it's
fun.
fun. What makes that fun?
It,
What's fun about that?
re, well, what's fun about hitchhiking in general? I don't know. How much hitchhiking
I've
have you
never
done?
hitchhiked before.
Oh, okay. So I hitchhiked across the U.S. like at least 3 or 4 times, and when I was young and had long hair, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was exciting because it was this question of like, who wants to pick you up? Who actively will reach out to you? They are the ones selecting, in their own heart, whether this is something they want to do, um, out of very many reasons. And I, on the other hand, standing on the roadside, am willing to be adaptable and engaging with whoever it is. And I don't know who that's going to be, and I'm going to be guaranteed that they actually cared enough about me to pull over. So they're not pulling over to shoot me. They're pulling over to help me, generally speaking.
Right.
And so I'm going to get someone that's decent, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm going to get to spend a time with them and get to know them and stuff like that. And the intimacy of hitchhiking is incredible. You're never going to see these people again. You can say anything, they can say anything, and there is no record of it. And it's one of those
Yeah.
opportunities where people can be incredibly intimate with a total stranger.
You know what?
And I love it. I think that's so much fun.
You know what? I think you just gave me an idea. I'm gonna start a podcast. I'm just gonna drive around, pick up hitchhikers, and record it.
Well, you're just violating the rule that I put in place,
Oh, right, right, right,
No one's ever going to know.
right, right, right. Um, you talked
Okay,
about
so anyhow, where we
no,
were.
no. I want to continue with the hitchhiking real quick, but you had an experience where someone pulled a gun on you, right?
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, in my first hitchhiking trip, basically my first ride ever hitchhiking.
So wait a second, like first hitchhiking attempt, you had a gun
Yeah,
pulled on you, right?
yeah,
On the first
yeah,
one. However,
yeah.
you had
Didn't stop me.
plenty more for years to come after that with no fear.
That's right.
That is one reason enough that you are super special because the average person that gets a gun pulled on them the first time they hitchhike will never do it again. Am I
Um,
would you agree?
that's possible.
That's possible. That's the first time doing
Yeah.
anything kind of discourages the second time you try it.
Well, that happened trying to surf for me. The first time I tried to
Yeah.
surf, it was bad. I almost died. And I was like, that's it. I ain't doing this anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not worth it.
But the thing is, surfing, you know you're gonna fall because that's what happens when you first start roller skating, skateboarding, surfing. You're gonna fall. That's all. That's part
No,
of it.
I didn't even get to the part where I could
Well, what
fall.
happened? Well,
I got to the part where I couldn't get through the break to get out to where the waves were. And a wave took me, pulled me under, snapped the cord on my surfboard, and rolled me for as long as I could possibly hold my breath until I touched the bottom and was able to find my way to the surface, you know.
yeah,
And so I was like, nah,
not for you.
drowning is not cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
anyhow, back to
yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, the story of the hitchhiking and the gun. You want that,
well,
or is
well,
it just is it
well,
enough?
well, well, that's enough. That's enough about the gun. We know that was a bad experience, but you kept going. But my question is back to the cross dressing, and then you went to the hormones and breasts.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what happened there? What
So
was the mentality behind that? And tell us a little bit about that.
this is where I got to be careful I don't just make up shit. Uh,
As long as entertaining, we're
hmm.
as long as it's entertaining, we're good.
When did this start happening? Um,
How
okay.
long have you? I don't want to throw too many questions, but how long have you had breasts?
Uh, Only a couple of years.
Oh,
I've been only working on them a couple of years,
okay.
you know. So, I'm thinking, let's just say within the last 5 years, since since uh, since Lisa died, I had more time on my own, and I think I got probably more preoccupied with understanding, uh, the half the population as women, trying to understand more deeply what is it being a woman, how 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 much of this can I actually understand? Because, I'd be the first to admit that there's a lot of limitations on understanding based on physical bodies and the hormones running around in those bodies. Um, and, not that that's what defines a woman, but it's commonplace in biological women that they have somewhat different hormone uh, balances than biological men. Um, but that's just one layer on a very, very multi-layered scale. I would have to say it. I think most women that are women in a culture are that way because they learned that behavioral style from other women that they grew up around. They learned it from their role models. Being, what is it to be a woman? So I ask myself all the time, is like, Savory, can you be a woman? And the answer is always no, you can't possibly be a woman. You haven't been raised by women. You haven't gone through the process of mimicking and learning behavioral cues and actions and all the finesse of any particular group of women. I mean, I have observations of my mom and sisters and the people in our family group that, are adequate for me to identify a woman, but to actually be my sister, who spent her whole childhood mimicking her role models, um, and suffering the kind of male eye and treatment. In our case, I don't think it was any abuse particularly, but in a lot of cases, women are actively suppressed and coerced by the culture around them, so that part of being a woman for them is a certain submissiveness, in response to that. And I wasn't subjected to that. I didn't have to be submissive to anybody. I had white male privilege. It doesn't get any better than that. I didn't have to act. You know,
Right.
so how can I possibly be a woman if I didn't have those? Didn't go through those classes.
Right.
So you know, that's not a real question for me. In some superficial way, I could act like a woman, and I doubt that I could pass as a woman, as they say in the transsexual circles. I have really no interest in passing as a woman or being mistaken for a woman because that's not the point of it for me. The point of it is, what can I learn about that whole section of humanity that you know fills out my understanding of what it is to be human.
But does
And
that have anything to do with the
hormones,
breast? Oh, okay. Sorry.
yeah, the hormones are definitely a part of that. I kind of like to start with the presumption that all humans are female, but some have testosterone added.
Hey.
And, kind of an XY chromosome approach to it, which is probably not right, on a certain level, but it's just as right as presuming that there are two basic humans, there's male humans and female humans, and that they're essentially different. That would be really stupid.
Right.
So why not just assume that we're all female and that some of us have testosterone added because they got that particular chromosome, and rather than developing all the features that women normally develop, they developed other body characteristics and hormone levels and stuff instead under the influence of testosterone and related compounds. So when I take that approach, the essential human is feminine, well, then if I want some of that, I have to do something to lower my testosterone. Um, and I'm going to have to ignore some of the effects of the testosterone. And, I'd be the first to admit that there are a lot of active imagination involved with that. Um, but in as much as, I'm not willing to go by any means through the whole transsexual shift, and having surgeries and, taking massive doses of hormones and stuff like that, for me personally, that would be a real sidetrack. But at the same time, um, I like a taste, I like to have some insight, and 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 I feel like I did accomplish that. I have accomplished that. Um, And when I went and I did this all in conjunction with my female doctor, that I'm inherently trusting, and we have a very good rapport, and we talk about all this shit, um, so that there's no deception going on, and she's willing to support me in whatever experiment I want to do, for the most part.
Right.
And so she was, I did a bunch of research and whatnot, came up with a plan. We did a test, a blood test, so I could determine where I'm at, kind of normally with my testosterone levels and estrogen and uh, what you call it, the other one, but progesterone. See what those levels are for me as a baseline, and then we start to play with it. you know, and turns out that there's a compound called dutasteride that actively blocks dihydrotestosterone, the active form of testosterone. Um, so what was going on after I established the baseline, and I was just doing like estrogen, progesterone creams occasionally, or more or less regularly. What was happening is my testosterone levels actually went up to try to maintain stasis in my body in response to those, uh, estrogen and testosterone. They tend to work antagonistically with each other. And so my body was like producing more and more testosterone, so
Yeah.
I wasn't getting anywhere with it. And I was going to my doctor, we'd do a test, and she's like, "Man, like the testosterone of a 30-year-old. What's going on here?" And so, um, but this dutasteride, by blocking the dihydrotestosterone, it effectively really allowed the estrogen and progesterone to have more effect, and that's when my breast started to enlarge. Um, what does this really do for me? Um, it's a feeling. I guess is all I can say. With the lower effect from testosterone, I was a lot more calm. I was a lot more peaceful and uh, not arguing with people. Um, I just felt more warm and fuzzy. And so that was, you know, probably the taste that I was looking for, is to get a little understanding of why women and men interact differently. Um, that warm and fuzzy thing is really cool. you know.
Good.
So, um, and the influence I got from especially my last girlfriend, Serena, she was into beauty products. And so I got a fairly first time really good support on beauty products. And in listening to her and reaching from her world, uh, for the kind of the first time, I put my attention on that, and the preoccupation with beauty, appearance, skin softness, how your body feels, you know, and sort of a worshiping of your body, which is something I had never done in all my maleish, existence. The body was just a vehicle to be run into the ground, It was something you used to get things done. It wasn't something I was going to pamper or preoccupy with the softness of, or really get into, aside from an occasion when I like smoked pot and it made me more hyper aware of my body, um, I kind of ignored it. And so what I found was the combination of these estrogen progesterone creams, the blocking of the testosterone, the growing breasts, and and add a hit of pot onto that. And I would go inside and for the first time really experience my body from the inside out rather than just as an object, as a skin surface sort of thing that I was looking at.
Yeah.
To really feel it from the inside,
Yeah.
I'm talking like not that many years ago,
Yeah.
as an old person, to actually be aware of feeling my own body from the inside,
Yeah.
and being sort of sensitized to how it felt.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. It opened my eyes to, well, this is really different than the man person I used to be. If this is what women are experiencing, holy shit, no wonder, men don't get it.
Right.
They're just looking at the skin, man.
Right.
They're just
Right.
looking at the skin. But they're
Right.
not feeling it. They're not being it.
Right.
They're not sensitive on all that surface area. You know,
Yeah.
they're no wonder they're just objectifying certain body parts. And that was me. And so there's some insight that came out of that process that I really appreciate now. I'm going to take it probably to the limit of, having breasts that look good in the clothing instead of wearing some sort of artificial silicon boobs. Take it to the point where they work. You know, but they're gonna be homegrown. I'm not gonna get into, surgeries and stuff like that. It's too, I'm a hippie,
Yeah.
It's like I can't really get into that personally from my identity past. It's okay if anybody else
Right.
wants to do it. It's fine with me. Don't come after me, man.
Speaking of hippie, you, from what I remember, you told me you just missed Woodstock. Like you,
Yeah, I
you,
could have gone.
you could have gone, but like, what was the reason you didn't go? There
Uh,
was a reason that
I
stopped you, right?
my I gave my parents too much authority. I knew it wouldn't go well in their world, and I wasn't habitually breaking their rules by that point in my life to where it would have been natural.
Yeah.
They would have been freaked out. If I had often gone with a couple of guys in a car to New York State, no, that wouldn't have gone well. They would have sent the police after me or something.
You know, it would have been worth the police and a search for you for that one moment in time that is historical.
Jimi Hendrix.
That would have been worth if you were going to get in trouble. That would have been the one to get in trouble for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, but I made my escape. I got out of there at 17, did my college thing, joined a commune. I got to go to rainbow gatherings. I got to run around naked. It wasn't Woodstock,
Yeah.
no. It really wasn't.
Well, I want to say that I really appreciate this conversation that we're having about, being transparent about your thoughts, your life, your journey as a cross dresser, and just talking to you in general. You always allow me to ask these questions. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you questions like this before, but this is
Not quite so continuously.
yeah. But we covered a lot because I never really asked you those questions. You're still my friend, but I'm saying, we were friends. We were talking about so many other different things that
It's really
whenever I tell people about you and I say, yeah, he dresses like a woman, but like he's still my plumber. We still talk. He still helps me with like, putting my catchment water thing together. Remember that was some heavy lifting.
Yeah, that was tough.
That was really tough. That was some heavy stuff. But the point is that I think you're interesting, and I want people to hear you talk because you represent people out there that are not talking, or that they're curious. People are curious about, like,
Mm,
I don't know anybody like you. I
mm.
don't know anybody. I don't Those people that haven't
Wow.
talked to you in years that live in Ocean View, they don't know anybody like you. That's why it took them a long time to come finally say
Yeah.
something. But we're gonna have to, we have some other things we're gonna talk about next
Cool.
episode. Um one thing you mentioned was curiosity is the opposite of fear, right?
Yeah.
Most people think, what is it? Courageousness is the opposite of fear, or
Bravery. Yeah.
bravery. So we're
Right.
we're gonna get into that, and we're gonna talk about that because I thought that was a really interesting discussion. And we'll cover that, but definitely looking forward to talking to you again. Uh,
Cool.
and we're gonna have plenty of time and plenty of other topics, but I think we did a good job of covering this topic.
Well, thank you, Roderick. It was a pleasure and it was fun. And namaste.
And is this the first time you've been like interviewed on camera and things like that?
It's the first time.
Okay, so
And I didn't drown.
you
It
didn't.
was
That's what
good.
I'm saying. Because what happens is, I don't know how you felt, but like I felt like it was just a regular conversation, like we normally do, right? You didn't feel any different, and that's, oh, maybe you did, but
I was a little
you
scared.
in the beginning though. But then you got more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like you did, and
It felt really good. I'm really at ease with you. I really love the way that we do this sort of dancing thing. It's very respectful,
yeah,
and I feel understood and heard, and I feel like I hear and understand you. Um, and we can take it anywhere. Once we have that basis of respect and curiosity, yeah, let's do it.
let's do it.